Trevor here with the first episode of Tic Tac Tips. In this episode, the first move that I'm going to be talking about is going to be the Webster. I figure the best way that I can teach this move is by analyzing it in relation to a person that can't do a Webster or is just learning to do a Webster, and comparing my Webster to theirs and seeing the little differences by a side-by-side video comparison. So we're going to use my friend Frank, and this is like one of his first times trying it. So it's not expected that he's going to be landing them, and yeah, we're going to compare his with mine. We'll see some differences between the two and what you can do to improve yours. The first technique that I want to focus on is actually going to be foot placement. The foot placement for a Webster is going to vary depending on whether you're doing a running Webster or just a standing Webster. If you're doing a running Webster, you're going to want to use the 1-2 takeoff that I talked about in the wall side flip and wall front flip tutorial that I did last year, I think, or sometime long ago. Anyways, you can check that tutorial out here if you want. Just like in that tutorial video, you want to try and focus on keeping your feet low to the ground, stepping with your first foot, immediately followed by your second foot. The goal of this is to shift your weight quickly while dipping your chest down. By dipping your chest, what you're doing is you're loading your leg muscles to explode upwards while using some basic blocking concepts. The good thing about this is it's a split foot setup, so your foot is perfectly set up to kick back, which is the next step for the Webster. So when we compare this with Frank's Webster, you'll see that his feet are placed closer together than mine, which doesn't allow him to shift his weight as far, thereby losing some explosive potential. You'll also notice that there's no intent to dip the body down to load the muscles. Instead, he dips and keeps going downwards to try to tuck for the flip. With standing Websters, on the other hand, people that are first learning them will often try to axe kick into them. Frank does this, and personally I've never been a fan of the axe kick, but I've seen people do it cleanly. The technique for these axe kick Websters are further away from the technique of a running Webster. So if you're learning axe kick Websters, and the skill might have less transferability when you go to learn them running. You'll also notice that Frank jumps before he does his standing Webster. He just gives it a little bit of a punch. That kind of technique, it works really well for standing front flips or normal front flips, or anything with a 2-foot takeoff really. But if it's a 1-foot takeoff, oftentimes your legs aren't strong enough to redirect the energy as efficiently upward, and as a result you don't get the height that you need. If you watch me, instead of an axe kick or instead of trying to punch, what I do is I modify my technique slightly by dipping lower. By doing this, I get my hips up higher, essentially forcing my kicking leg to snap around very quickly. The second technique that I focused on was back posture. Now, I noticed when I kept a straighter back, my body was less inclined to go downwards because my chest stayed high. It was almost as if by keeping my back straighter, I was able to rotate around my hips and butt more, as opposed to rotating around a point that was closer to my stomach or even outside of my body. This point holds true for both running Websters and standing Websters, as you can see here. The third and final technique that I focused on when I was learning the Webster was how to load my arms and legs with energy to get me around for the flip. The most important thing in this regard is the angle that you're going to kick your leg at. But it's also important to know when to bend your elbows, when to bend your knee, and when to bend your leg at the hip. You'll notice that I kick my leg straight up and it only bends to tuck in once I've reached the appropriate angle. On the other hand, Frank bends his leg too early, which shoots his momentum and rotation forwards. Furthermore, you'll notice that my arms drop down straight initially, and then they quickly bend, which loads them. Then they get launched back and straightened to generate both height and rotational energy. Frank doesn't bend his arm at all. This results in him not getting enough height and rotation. This final technique applies to both the standing and the running variations of Webster. Anyways, those are the pointers that I feel are important to learning my Webster. It's important for you to get out there and try it for yourself to understand what techniques or what body positions you need to get yourself in to land yours. Once you get good at these techniques, you'll be able to modify them and make them your own, like doing multiple in a row or over-rotating to land on your knee, that kind of thing. Anyways, thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what you want me to do the next Tic Tac tips on. Have a good day.
It's over. It's over, boys and girls.